Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our presentation today. I'm Melissa Knowles with Social Studies Services. I want to tell you about the chat feature on the right-hand side. On your control panel at the bottom, if you have any questions or comments during the webinar, I'll be monitoring that and I'll make sure the presenter gets any information that she needs to respond to. So feel free to use that. Also at the end, there'll be a survey, so please go ahead and fill that out for us. And once again, welcome to our presentation today. I hope you're as excited about this webinar as I am. Today's topic is PreK, setting a foundation for thinking. And Margaret McGuire is our presenter. She's a professor of education at Seattle University and a former president of the National Council for Social Studies. She has presented nationally and internationally on topics related to early childhood education, social studies, and literacy integration. She's the author of a fabulous series and the author of PreK Story Path and the K-8 Story Path programs published by Social Studies Services. So we are so excited to be with her today and learning from this expert. And so, Miss Margaret, are you ready?
I'm ready, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think this is a busy time of year as school gets underway for people living in my part of the world. And as I understand from Melissa, she's already been in school for a month. And either way, it is a busy time. So I will share with you today the information related to the pre-K learning and especially about this exciting new program called PreK Story Path. So please don't hesitate to ask questions. I want to try to move the information along fairly quickly so that I can make the most of your time and give you the information that you might need. But again, please don't hesitate to interject a question if I'm not clear about something or you want to know more about this program. So here's what I hope that we can accomplish today. I want to introduce you to the curriculum, and I also want to connect that curriculum with the work that we've done in terms of thinking about the research base. So we're going to take a few moments to look at brain research, dramatic play, literacy, English language learners, and social emotional learning, and how this curriculum is designed to really try to foster skills along all those areas that we would like young children to grow in. So the curriculum that we are featuring today is called PreK Story Path. There are 3 published units at the moment. We hope that there will be more. And you can see the various topics that we have chosen. I'm excited to share with you that we did extensive piloting in pre-K classrooms with highly diverse students because one of our goals was to make sure that all kids would flourish with a curriculum like this. So let me begin with the question, what is Story Path? And I wish you were sitting in front of me so I could ask how many of you know something about this particular strategy called Story Path. Since I don't have that opportunity to see you, I will plunge ahead with telling you what it is. So this strategy is a fairly simple concept. It was originated in Scotland over 30 years ago, where teachers were trying to think about how do you make sense of information for kids. And we all know that story is one of those powerful vehicles for helping our human brains to make sense of the world. So we took that notion and built on the idea of setting, character, and plot as a way to organize the curriculum. We know that when students know things through story, they are more likely to remember it, as we all are, regardless of what our age is. So what StoryPath offers us as educators, there's a structure because we're going to follow the notion of a story with the setting and character and plot. So it's a way to organize a curriculum, and it also is a strategy. And the strategy is very grounded in the notion of inquiry and asking lots of questions of our learners. So in that process, we're asking children to think about things, answer questions, problem solve, and those questions, of course, are going to lead them to understand what it is we would like them to learn. So I'm today going to take some time to walk you through an exemplar. And the one I've chosen today is called the post office as a topic. And we then essentially have created a narrative using that particular topic, as is true for the other two pre-K story paths. As you see from Matai and Willis, there's a lot of notion of the value of narratives to really support thinking in the brain, because it taps in both in the context of learning and remembering. And what I like to say, if it's worth teaching, then it ought to be worth remembering. And so using this particular strategy of a story, I think really taps into that aspect of our brains. So to give you an overview and a sense of how this curriculum looks as a classroom teacher, we have organized the story path around episodes. So you can see from each of the episodes, starting with a letter arrives to the end of it, it has a story sequence. You will also notice that the curriculum includes teacher workshops. So we gave time and attention to what are some of the things that we all need to go back and think about if we're going to think. In this case, obviously there's lots of opportunities for writing. So what do we need to remember when it comes to emergent writing? So those helps are included in the curriculum, and they're short, they're teacher friendly. They're a quick reference for teachers that may want to go back and say, okay, what do I need to remember when I'm going to teach this particular kind of skill or understanding? Along with that, we also included some professional development articles that again are designed to really reinforce and support us as we think about working with our students. And then we've definitely tied them to the national standards for early learning. And we've been very conscious of making sure that the curriculum is best practice. So one of the things that is pretty unique about this particular curriculum material is that we took on the challenge of telling the story through the curriculum guide through more or less a graphic story. And so this curriculum is set up different from what I know of most curriculums for classroom teachers. So the top part of the curriculum, through the visual and the discussion from the person who's shown in this particular example, tells you a story of the story path. For teachers that may not find that helpful or interesting or want to take the time, the bottom part of the page gives the here's what you need to do. So what we were trying to think about is how do we support teachers? Some teachers may have more experience with early childhood education. Some people may have less. You may have paraprofessionals who are in your classroom working with you, or you may be even bringing on new people that don't have a strong early childhood background. So the top part of the curriculum may be more helpful for those people, where for your more seasoned teacher in early childhood, the bottom aspect of the curriculum probably is sufficient for them to determine what they want to do with each of the lessons. So in this particular story path, as I mentioned earlier, we have a set of 6 different episodes. And now what I'm going to do is walk you through how the curriculum would unfold. So the story starts, or you introduce the curriculum to the students with saying, guess what? A letter has arrived. And in this case, the teacher read the letter to the students to get them excited about what was going to happen as they ventured into this topic of learning about the post office. So we launched the unit with using discussion posters, which are included in the curriculum. Simple, straightforward. The example obviously shown on the PowerPoint gives you a notion of not too much information, something's pretty focused, tapping into what children of all different backgrounds may know or want to know about what the post office does. Because it's inquiry based, we ask lots and lots of questions of students. And of course, we're guiding those questions to really be responsive to what students know and understand as they come into a topic such as this. We're also, of course, introducing vocabulary. We're introducing it in the context of the story, which we believe makes it much more powerful for students to understand and make sense of new vocabulary. So after we've introduced the story and we are comfortable that students have an idea about what a post office does and who are the people that might work in the post office, we get more specific in the second episode of helping them thinking about what would it be like to be a mail carrier. So we're integrating the arts of creating a person so that they can help think of themselves as a mail carrier. And in this case, you see some student examples. Some of the mail carriers have more detail on them than others. We gave them the paper dolls. We helped them think about how to cut out their character clothing and talking about uniforms. And then we let them put together their mail characters. While they're doing that kind of work, we're talking to them about, well, what do you think it might feel about to be a mail carrier, and why do you think you might have to wear a uniform, and what would be difficult about doing the job? And so that conversation keeps going as you work with the students as they begin to create their characters for the story and imagine themselves as mail carriers. Obviously, young children are eager to jump in and do the pretend play, and we're really capitalizing on that. We're trying to direct some of that play by asking questions, putting props in the setting so that they begin to think about what is the work that a mail carrier might do. We also, again, are including posters, and you can see the poster is pretty straightforward with a clear and straightforward kind of question, and then different opportunities that are offered on the back of the poster to think about other questions that you might ask and help kids understand about the work of a mail carrier in a post office. So that leads us into the third episode, which is helping them to think about the neighborhood. Of course, the neighborhood is important because the mail has to be delivered. And of course, this part the students absolutely love. So it's a great way for this particular topic to think about, well, what's our neighborhood like? What kind of houses do we live in, or do we live in apartment buildings? And so you can see that students have created, with the help of the teacher, lots of homes and apartments, and they put them up onto a bulletin board. Lots of different strategies that teachers use to do that. I offered two examples here. You can see in the lowercase, the student pictures appeared on the house to make that more concrete for kids. Then we started to think about, well, what is a mailbox like, and how do we think about mailboxes? So again, lots of different ways that children started to create their mailboxes. Different teachers chose different ways to do that. So In the curriculum, we've tried to think about multiple ways that you can do things so you're not locked into everybody has to have a box like the one on the lower right, or everybody has to do it with a envelope card. So lots of different ways for students to gain that understanding of what mailboxes are, what this purpose they serve. And of course, as you can see, the students had great fun decorating and thinking about their mail, which of course they are eager to get mail, which leads us then into building contacts. So now we want to really think more about what kinds of things happen when you get mail and who sends you mail and why would we send letters. And of course, the wonderful part of this particular topic is the kids are very excited to write their letters, whether it's their writing or it's dictated letters or whatever strategy the teacher chooses to use. They were eager and excited to create their letters, put them in the mailbox, send them off, and have that kind of conversation. What I shared with you on the slide on the right is we actually recorded what students actually said to give you a sense of how that conversation went on with the classroom teacher as she was starting to talk about what is mail, how does it get delivered, how do we write letters and address envelopes and so forth. And you can see a wide variety of ideas coming from the students. In an ideal world, it's great to be able to visit a post office, and post offices are absolutely excited to have students come and visit. I know that isn't always possible, but teachers in all of the pilot classrooms had no difficulty inviting a letter carrier to come in and talk with students. They were eager to do it. They loved to see the actual uniform. And of course, they've all had an opportunity to see the various vehicles that carry our mail for us. So if schools can make that happen, of course, that really enriches the curriculum. And that's one of the options. And of course, the other option, of course, is to invite a letter carrier to come in. And even the letter carrier that might come to your school, if you say, can you, share a few minutes to come into the classroom, we found our experience is that letter carriers are pretty willing to do that. So we spent a lot of time having kids write letters. We had a lot of different strategies that we suggested for teachers to use. Teachers, of course, do a lot of this work already, so it's a great way to use the strategies you're already have in place, and now you give it a purpose for writing letters to be mailed and put in the post office. Kids wanted to send letters home to their families, and that was an option. They wanted to send it to relatives that might not have lived in their neighborhood, so that was another option. So it, I think, opens up all kinds of possibilities for teachers to build on this particular idea with going many different directions. And of course, they loved playing post office, so that dramatic play was evident throughout this entire unit of study. But of course, in a great story, there's always a plot or a problem to be solved. And so we introduced a problem, and essentially that is set up to say, okay, what might emerge naturally from their playing post office, so that we're really taking it from their own experience and then building on that to create the problem. So we set up the structure for the various play activities and to solve the problem. And so it's a fairly straightforward. You introduce the problem, what are our choices? What can we do? Let's have a plan and then implement the plan. So this one that emerged out of student play was everyone was shoving lots of paper into the mailbox. and it was just getting overcrowded. So the teacher said, okay, let's use that as the problem. So it really grew out of their own lived experience through this particular curriculum. And you could see as the teacher starts the conversation with the students what kinds of things they were talking about. So we said, okay, here's the problem. There's too much mail. Let's have a plan, and then implementing the plan, which is what we did. And then saying, well, how did that work? So asking them, these of course are exactly what young children would say. You can see how the teacher's given a lot of agency to students to figure out the problem, guided through lots of great questions to figure out what they're going to do with the problem that they have encountered. So they solved the problem with lots of ideas about what they needed to do. They decided definitely trash should not go into the mailbox, so that was a great outcome. And that solved the problem, and we moved on to the concluding event. And this is just a natural outcome that connects so well to this particular topic, which was to plan a party and then write invitations to family members to come to the party. And in this case, they actually mailed the invitations. We know that there's cost involved with that because postal rates do continue to go up. Another alternative in schools where they may not have the resources to actually buy stamps to send a letter through the mail is to simply send it home with students. But of course, if you can send it through the mail, that makes it all the more exciting for the students. So you can see that we invited families in. Kids were excited to share what they'd learned. We had students operating with the notion of, okay, let's dictate letters to our families. So they really wanted to write. They wanted to tell about their story of working in the post office, but the party at the end really brought it to close. So let me now turn briefly to why we've had such success with working with early childhood students and teachers with this particular curriculum. Right away, children own the story. They feel like they have agency, like I get to make what happens in the story. What I do matters in the story. They were excited to learn. They had something to write about. It wasn't us doing something that seemed artificial. It seemed very natural to the story. They were either eager to write. We found children who were often reluctant writers. It was more difficult for them to pick up a pencil and write letters. They wanted to do it because they knew they could put their letter in an envelope and put it in the mailbox. And that got them very, very excited. Of course, the curriculum has assessment sources included. They are tied to the national standards for early childhood education. And we offer lots of options for how teachers can utilize different aspects of the assessment, which are included with the curriculum. So the big picture is to kind of think, oh, what are these key attributes of early childhood education best practice that are captured through this particular curriculum? And let me now turn to some statements about the research. So we know that the brain research which is fascinating these days because we're learning so much more. So we know kind of three big ideas for positive learning experiences are the importance of positive relationships, positive experiences, and that notion for language development, as it's being called, serve and return interactions. So positive relationships, the students realize to make their post office work, they've all got to work together and solve problems together and take turns sorting the mail. So that naturally grows out of that, and connected very closely is reinforcing those kind of positive experiences about working together effectively. Because this is an inquiry-based kind of a curriculum, there's a lot of questioning and prompts that are included in the curriculum of the kinds of questions teachers might ask of students. And so we're finding that moving the curriculum to a questioning kind of inquiry process really helps kids think in a way that's different, as opposed to us simply telling them. Or so to contrast that, say, here's what happens in a post office, and then explaining that, as opposed to, what do you think might happen in a post office? How do we figure this out? Who are the people that work in a post office? What do they need to do? So what we're finding is that blends really well with encouraging self-directed creative play, because they want to be the postal workers. So we saw students figuring these things out as they were working through the curriculum, with lots of planning about what goes into their post office, how they're going to put together their community, symbols of letters, symbols of postage stamps, symbols of making houses, and so forth. So we were very deliberate about the dramatic play opportunities throughout it, and really leaving it to the children to raise up issues and questions for us to solve together as a learning community. So, of course, they wanted to play really all day if we let them doing just the post office, because they were so engaged with that. But then we were also making connections to other kinds of activities that the students want to do. So there was opportunity for free play with the post office, including other choices for students that may want to do other things. But we also then set time up specifically for them to really be playing post office and doing all the activities that would be involved in a topic such as this. This particular topic, of course, was ideal for the literacy, which I think I've spoken about, and I think it's obvious. They now have a reason to write letters. So opportunities for prior knowledge, for reading stories about the post office, which we've included suggestions for early childhood educators of books that we think work well for this particular topic. The exchange between a postal worker and a classroom was highly recommended if possible. Creating the place is really important in all the various activities that naturally link to literacy. For English language learners, we saw amazing things happening, because I think we understood a topic like this all kids could relate to. They wanted to talk about it. They had their own life experiences that they could bring to the conversation. So we felt like a topic like this and an approach like this really levels the playing field, so every child can enter into play regardless of what their first language is, and have a part in the story. So they were all characters in the story. They all could take on those roles and have a sense of agency. So we had a lot of fun thinking about developing this curriculum. We were very conscious of the best practices in early childhood education, and melding that with this notion of a story as a way to connect the curriculum. We also know that every child, regardless of their background, can have a place in the story. And we also knew that it would be highly engaging for students. So I will pause. I did not see that anyone typed any messages to me, but I will pause for a moment and see if you have questions that I might answer before we sign off for today. So I'm not seeing anyone quickly typing into my message bar. So if you have questions, you can obviously, you'll see on the chat side where Pam Gothard is available through Social Studies School Services with her email address. So please direct questions to her. She can always forward them to me as well, but you can also reach out to me as well as one of the authors of the curriculum. So I want to thank everyone for staying with me today, and I hope that you will have an opportunity to try this curriculum. I think you'll find it highly rewarding. So thanks very much, everyone, and hope your school year is off to a good start. And take a look at PreK StoryPath. I think you'll love it. Okay, bye for now.
Thank you so much, Margaret. That was amazing. I cannot wait to see them and find out when they're going to be available. Excellent. Just so many opportunities for students. I know they have pretty much taken out play in the classrooms, not in our pre-K, but in our kindergarten, which is also important. But even in pre-K, they have to have literacy components. And this is absolutely full of literacy for those teachers that are looking to still include the play, but also have the literacy that's required by the state. So excellent resource for our teachers. Well, again, thank you so much, Miss Margaret. And I thank everyone for coming and for listening tonight. Make sure you respond to the survey, to the questionnaire at the end, and I hope you have a great evening.